Hey, we have my UCI illegal Winspace SLC5 in a size extra large, coming in at exactly 7 kilograms all in. And that includes pedals, a power meter, a bottle cage, and a out front computer mount, coming in at exactly 7 kilograms. So what that means is if you were to weigh this out the industry standard way, where you remove the pedals, power meter, cage, and computer mount, this is actually more like 6.7 kilograms. Straight to jail. There was Brenda, Letitia, Linda, Felicia, Dawn, LaShawn, Inez, and Alicia. Yo, my bad. Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. Today we are looking at the brand new Winspace SLC5 because as you guys can see, my build is finished. So we're going to be going over some of the specs, the components I chose with, why I went with this particular size extra large, and then of course I'm going to give you some of my first ride impressions. Huge shout out to Winspace for sending me out the frame. So without further ado, let's begin. Now, about a year and a half ago, Winspace released their SLC version 3, which was the previous version of this one, and they were advertising and claiming that particular frame set to be very close in riding dynamics to the Specialized Tarmac SL8. Being that I have ridden both of those bikes, I can tell you right now that the SL3, while it was a fantastic climbing bike, did not really feel that close to the Tarmac SL8. However, this brand new frame here, this SLC version 5, has a lot of characteristics that I think the consumer out there who's looking for a more budget alternative, although this isn't that significantly cheaper than a Tarmac SL8, this one will feel a little bit right at home if you have ridden the Tarmac SL8. Sheesh. All right, so let's talk about details on this, guys. So this color that you see here is Mirage. Apparently this color is limited edition, and somewhere on this frame set I'm supposed to have a numbered edition. So let me know in the comments where that number is. I didn't find it, but the size I went with is a size extra large. And the reason why I went with a size extra large, where I went up a size, is because I was basically between sizes. If I went down to a size large, I would have the stack low enough, but then the reach would be too narrow or short where I'd have to run a 140 millimeter length stem, and I didn't want to do that. Looking at the comparable frame sizes on these two bikes, we have the Tavello Aero on the left and the Winspace SLC5 on the right. So if you were to compare both of these on the geometry chart, the overall frame reach is identical. I believe it's 399 millimeters. However, the overall stack height frame-wise on the Winspace is a little bit higher. So in order to get the one-to-one bike fit, I had to literally slam the cockpit on the Winspace. But the good news with this is this should give me a little bit more of a direct and stiff road feel versus using 15 mils of spacers on the Tavello Aero. So I do really appreciate that. And then even just the stand over height is identical as well. I believe it's like 805 millimeters. And another good thing by going with this approach, by moving up just a frame size, is I'm only having to use a 120 millimeter length stem on this cockpit versus using a 130 on the Tavello. And the reason being is because on the Winspace, I am using SRAM's latest E1 shifters, which does give a little bit longer of an effective reach, which means I only had to go down to a 120. But overall, I pretty much have everything one-to-one on these two bikes. So by me going up to a size extra large, I had all the reach I needed while being able to run only a 120 cockpit, as well as being able to literally slam this stem all the way. So now that we are here with the cockpit, let's talk about where this is from. So this is courtesy of my boy Peter over at XM Carbon Speed. I've been really enjoying this particular cockpit. It's stiff, the fit and finish on here is really good. So we have 36 centimeters width in the hoods, and then in the drops it flares out to around 38 centimeters or so. And then, like I said, the stem on here is 120 millimeters in length. And then moving over to the drivetrain, guys, we got the latest SRAM Force E1 group set. We have this in a 1x configuration. So the crank length is 170, the power meter, the chainring is a 52 tooth, and then out back we have a 10-30 cassette. Pretty much standard stuff at this point. I've been using this group set for a couple of different frames, and so far it's been really good. I really like the braking performance on here, and the shifting on here is exceptionally crisp. One thing that I actually use that you can't see is I'm using SRAM's in-house ceramic BA7 bottom bracket. The bottom bracket is fantastic, guys. It's really smooth, it spins exceptionally well, and it is something that I tangibly can feel. Now moving on to the wheels, we are using my tried and true number 6 58 wheels. I've been using these wheels now for over a year now. These are my dedicated race wheels. As far as tires goes, we are using Continental GP5000. These are tubeless tires, although I am running TPUs at the moment, but these come in at a 30C width. And the reason why I'm using these particular tires and wheels as a combo with this particular frame set is because I want to make sure that when I'm talking about my comments on this particular bike in terms of ride dynamics, that we are using all of the similar components that I would use on, say, my Tavello Aero. And with that being said, I am using my tried and true saddle, which is the Sella Italia SLR Boost. This is the S3 version of the width, meaning that the width on here in the sit bones is 130 millimeters. Now, as far as the build quality and the fit and finish on this SLC version 5, it is fantastic. It's right up there with Specialized with the Tarmac SL8. When it came to installing the bottom bracket, it was absolutely flawless. When it came to installing the bearings, there was zero play, no creaks, no rattle. And the one thing that has been absolutely fantastic with the build quality on here has to do with the mounts for the calipers. Basically, if you guys have been following this channel for the last few months, you know that this has been a pain point with some of the other super budget frame sets. But when it came to aligning the caliper to the rotors, I literally was able to do it in under probably 5 or 6 minutes. So good job, Winspace. You've really been paying attention to these particular points, and I think you guys, the consumers, will also appreciate that as well. Now, what's not so great here, guys, is as you guys can see, we have these little stickers on here because for some reason, Winspace's engineers, they completely effed this up. So basically, when you go to turn the handlebars 90 degrees, this part scratches right in here. And even though we are using a sticker, I've already chipped off some paint. I don't know what the heck they were smoking there. This is absolutely unacceptable. For myself, this is going to be a long-term build, so it's not a huge deal, but this is absolutely janky. This might come as a shocker to you guys, but I am just an average middle-aged black man who loves to ride bikes and who also loves to build them. Now, does that make me qualified to speak on the riding dynamics of a bike? Probably, but probably not. But nonetheless, this Winspace SLC5, let's talk about it. So the way I have this bike set up on paper, I had it set up to basically compete one-to-one against my Tavello Aero in terms of geometry, the bike fit, using a lot of the same components like the wheels and the saddle, etc. And I was expecting my first initial impressions on this bike to be basically almost one-to-one to the Tavello Aero. However, it actually feels dynamically more like my Tarmac SL8. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, for starters, the Tavello Aero, it's a very stiff frame. It's very clear that this frame, the Tavello Aero that is intended for performance and for racing, meaning that it's very stiff from the rear to the bottom bracket all the way up to the front end of the cockpit. Even when I'm running spacers, it's very clear, it's very communicative, and it's just overall a very performance focused bike. It's a race bike. Now, with this Winspace SLC5, it feels more like my Tarmac SL8, meaning that the front end is quite stiff, and then as you move towards the rear from the bottom bracket even to the rear triangle, it's a little bit more comfortable, it's a little bit more agreeable, and just a little bit more well-rounded overall. Now, I think part of the reason why that front end is so stiff, it's almost unbalanced stiff compared to the rear of the bike. I think part of that has to do with the fact that I am running the cockpit basically slammed. So you get a lot of communication, you get a lot of feedback through that front end, through that head tube, because the cockpit is slammed. I would say that there's probably more road communication with this Winspace SLC5 versus on my Tavello Aero, keeping in mind that, again, that the Tavello Aero is running spacers. So when you are out of the saddle, when you're climbing, I imagine if you are descending on this thing, you're going to understand what your wheels are doing at all times, simply just because there's just so much feedback coming through the front end. Now, when you move towards the back of this bike, the Winspace SLC5, this is where it starts to get interesting. So just like the Tarmac SL8, it's really, really comfortable. It's very agreeable over rough pavement. Now that we are in the winter time here in Chicago, there's so many potholes, there's salt, there's road grime, and this is where I noticed that the SLC5 is a lot more comfortable than the Tavello Aero. I would say it's probably just a hair more comfortable than the Tarmac SL8, but I think the reason for that is because I do detect that there is a little bit of flex coming from the seat post, coming from the triangle, and just the bottom bracket overall. I think it is a little bit more on the softer side. So basically what you have is you have a front end that's exceptionally stiff, and then it just gets softer the further back you go onto the bike. Now, I suspect that the reason why this bike feels a little bit softer towards the middle and then towards the rear end of the triangle is simply because I'm moving up to a larger size. There's more carbon fiber. Who knows whether or not Winspace has accounted for the fact that because you do have larger triangles, there is a lot more opportunity for there to be frame flex as opposed to going down to a smaller size. But all in all, I would say so far, this bike feels very, very comfortable. I can't say right now whether or not it's as performance orientated as my Tavelo Aero or even the Tarmac SLA. I'll have to continue to put it through its paces throughout these upcoming months. But so far, I can say that for 2/3 of the bike, it's exceptionally comfortable. And then for the 1/3, which is more for the front end, that the cockpit area, the head tube, is very, very stiff. So that is going to wrap up today's video, guys. Once again, huge thank you to Winspace for sending me out this SLC version 5. Questions, comments, and concerns, please feel free to leave them down below, and I'm gonna check you guys on the next one. And then stay tuned over the coming months as I will continue to give you guys updates. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.